was sorry. Okay. The daily sacrifice was offered with 9 kohanim, or with 10, or with 11, or with 12, no less and no more. How so? The sacrifice itself was 9. On Sukkot, one held a flask of water in his hand, so thus we have 10. In the afternoon with 11, the sacrifice itself with 9, plus 2 who held 2 logs in their hands. On Shabbos with 11, the sacrifice itself with 9, plus 2 who held the 2 spoons of frankincense and of the panim bread in their hands. And on the Sabbath during Sukkot, one held a flask of water in his hand. A ram was offered with 11, the meat with 5, the intestines, the fine flour, and the wine with 2 each. And an ox was offered with 24, the head and the hind leg, the head with 1 and the hind leg with 2. The tail and the hind leg, the tail with 2 and the hind leg with 2. The breast and the neck, the breast with 1 and the neck with 3. The 2 forelegs with 2. The two sides with 2. The intestines, the fine flour, and the wine with 3 each. In which cases do the above apply? For communal sacrifices, but for personal sacrifices, if he wanted to offer, he may do so. The flaying and dissection of these and of those are the same.
Okay. So now the chief operating officer of the Kohanim says to the Kohanim, it's still at some wee hour of the morning, which any fool can tell is night, and he says, but it's getting close to dawn time. So go and see. Im higia zman hashchita, is it time yet for the shchita? Okay, im higia haroy omar barkai. If the time has arrived and he shouts out barkai. Now that expression barkai means hivrik ve'ir hashachar, and there's another meaning of it. Matisya ben Shmuel omer heir pnei kol hamizrach ad shebechevron. He asks a further question to say that has the whole eastern sky all the way down to Hebron started to lighten up. Of course, Hebron is in the south, so you're looking at the east, but you must see an expanse of light going all the way down to from the north to the south, Hebron. And why do we mention Hebron? Of course, to invoke the Schos Avos, because that's of course where the Avos are buried. Hu omer hen, and then he says yes. Why? So Lama hutzrachu lekach, says the Mishna, says the following Mishnah. Why did they have to add on all of this checking? Shepam achas alam ma'or halvana v'dimu shehir mizrach, because at some point this could not possibly have been on Yom Kippur. It would have to have been later in the month, because it's only towards Rosh Chodesh that moonrise is before sunrise. So Shepam Allah ma'or levana v'dimu shehir hamizrach. So it was such a bright moonrise that they thought that was the sign that sunrise was coming up. And they shechted the tamid and they discovered that they'd done it too early. It was before Alas Shachar, and therefore they had to burn the ola, not on the mizbeach. Okay. So now back to Yom Kippur. So as soon as the morning is starting to lighten, in other words, we reached the time of Alas Shachar, the Kohen Gadol goes to the mikveh. So there was a general rule in the mikdash: if anyone needed to evacuate his bowels, anyone who was already tahor, and then he needed to evacuate his bowels, before he's allowed to come back into the mikdash, he has to go to the mikveh again. And if he's just passing water, he just needs to re-sanctify his hands and feet. Yeah. Mishna Gimel, Ein Adam nichnas le'azara la'avoda afilu tahor ad sheyitzbom. This is even if a person knows that he's tahor, he toiveled yesterday, he was in the Beis HaMikdash yesterday, and in fact he was eating korbanos yesterday, and the next morning nothing happened overnight, he didn't become tamei, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Before you go into the Mikdash, you have to go to mikveh. even if you know your tahor. Okay. Chamesh tevilos v'asara kiddushin tovel kohen gadol u'mekadesh bo bayom. So there are 5 times that the kohen gadol goes to mikvah on Yom Kippur, and 10 kiddushin that he, in other words, 10 times he washes his hands and feet from a kli in order to sanctify them. Each time it was before and after the mikveh. So he would wash his hands before stripping down, then he'd go to the mikveh, and then he'd come back up, get dressed, and again do a kiddush yadayim b'raglayim. Okay. And all of this happened in the Azara, in the chamber called the Beis HaParva. There was a mikveh in the Beis HaParva, which he did all of his tevilas except for this first one, because the first one is before he's allowed to enter the mikdash. Once he's inside the mikdash, then he's allowed to use the mikveh that's inside the mikdash. Yeah, that kind. All right, you want to go with Shkalim?
Okay. Regarding the salt and the wood, the base din instituted that the Kohanim may make use of them. Regarding the red cow, they instituted that its ashes be exempt from the laws of Elah. And regarding replacement of disqualified bird offerings, that they should come from the public treasury, Rabbi Yossi says the one who supplies the birds must supply replacements for the disqualified ones. All spittle that is found in Yerushalayim is assumed to be tahor, except for that found in the upper market. These are the words of Reb Meir. Rabbi Yossi says at other times of the year, whatever spittle is in the middle of the street is assumed to be tameh, and whatever is on the sides is tahor. But at this time of the pilgrimage festival, whatever spittle is in the middle of the street is assumed to be tahor, and whatever is at the sides is tameh, because since they are a minority, they withdraw to the sides. All utensils that are found in Yerushalayim on the path leading down to the mikveh are assumed to be tameh, but those found on the path leading up from the mikveh are assumed to be tahor. So the path of their descent is not the path of their ascent. These are the words of Reb Meir. And Reb Yossi says all are assumed to be tahor except for the basket, the shovel, and the spade that are reserved for grave sites.
Okay. Pesachim. Yeah, that's it. Pesachim Vav Aleph.
These things pertaining to the Pesach offering override Shabbos. Its slaughter, throwing of the blood, removal of the offal from its entrails, and the burning of its fats. But its roasting and the rinsing of the entrails do not override Shabbos. Carrying it, bringing it from outside the Shabbos limit, and cutting off its wart do not override the Sabbath. Reb Eliezer says they do override it. Said Reb Eliezer, this is not a logical argument. If slaughter of the Pesach, which is scripturally prohibited as labor, overrides Sabbath, then these which are forbidden merely because of rabbinic provision should certainly override Shabbos. Said Reb Shua to him, that the festival laws prove this, for on that they were permitted labor, but forbade on what is prescribed because of rabbinic provisions. Reb Eliezer said to him, what is this, Yeshua? What proof can you adduce from a permissible act to a mitzvah? Rabbi Akiva responded and said, let sprinkling prove that this is for a mitzvah, and it is forbidden because of rabbinic prohibition, and does not override Shabbos. So you should not wonder about these, even though they are a mitzvah, and are forbidden because of rabbinic prohibitions. They do not override Shabbos. Said Rabbi Eliezer to him, but what about this do I apply my logic? If slaughter, which is forbidden because it is categorized as a labor, overrides Shabbos, then sprinkling, which is forbidden only by rabbinic provision, should surely override Shabbos. Said Rabbi Akiva to him, perhaps the opposite is correct. If sprinkling, which is forbidden by rabbinic prohibition, does not override Shabbos, the slaughtering, which is forbidden because it is categorized as a labor, should surely override Shabbos. But Eliezer said to him, Akiva, you have uprooted what is written in the Torah. In the afternoon, in its appointed time, which applies both on weekdays and on Shabbos. Said Rabbi Akiva, my master, give me an appointed time for these, which is like the appointed time for slaughter. general rule was stated by Rabbi Akiva: any labor that can be performed on the eve before Sabbath does not override Shabbos. The slaughtering which cannot be performed on the eve of the Sabbath cannot override Shabbos. When does one bring a chagiga up with it? When it is offered on a weekday impurity and it is insufficient. But when it is offered on Shabbos or is abundant or in a contamination, we do not bring a chagiga with it.
Okay. Okay, Shabbos, Aleph Ches.
Beit Shammai says we may not give hides to a Gentile tanner, nor clothing to a Gentile launderer, unless there is sufficient time that they be completed while it is still day. In all these cases, Reb Hillel permits the act when the sun is still up. Shimon ben Gamil says, at my father's household used to give us white clothes to a Gentile launderer 3 days before Shabbos. And both concur that we may place the beams of the olive press and the rollers of the olive press. We may not roast meat, onions, or eggs unless there is sufficient time for them to become roasted while it is yet day. And we not place bread in the oven near overnight nightfall, nor cake nor coals, unless there is sufficient time for the upper surface to form a crust while it still is yet day. The Eliezer says sufficient time for it is because surfaces to the bottom surface to form a crust. Yeah. Okay. Question was, where does that last part come in on a test? So about laundering, giving the launderer 3 days before Shabbos, and all of a sudden he comes out with them, and both concur that they may place the beams of the olive press and rollers of the wine press. Why does that?
Why is so? Let's just go back and check the commentary before I answer so quickly. So why can you put the base abad? Okay, shenostim be'erev Shabbos isa korav ala zaysim base abad la'achat shetachnu es zaysim. So after you've this is after you've already crushed the olives, and now you're just leaving the beam on top of it to squeeze out the last drops. Okay. Okay, why is Beis Shammai okay with that? Since they've already been squeezed. And the liquid already started coming out on Erev Shabbos. Even Beis Shammai agreed that this is okay, because even you could even do this because even if somebody did this on Shabbos, they wouldn't be chayav chatas, because the liquid is coming out of its own accord. It's not.
It's not being squeezed out or anything, right? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we have Yadayim.
Face.
One may pour onto the hands from all types of vessels, even from dung vessels, from stone vessels, or from mud vessels. One may not pour onto the hands from the walls of vessels, or from the bottom of an earthenware locket, or from the cover of a barrel. Nor may one pour onto the hands of his friend from his own cupped hands, because we will not draw water from mekatas. Nor may we consecrate mekatas, nor may we sprinkle mekatas, nor may we pour onto the hands except with the vessel. And nothing with a sealed cover can protect its contents from tumah except vessels. And nothing can protect suta from contaminating tumah from an earthenware vessel except vessels. Regarding water that became unfit for an animal to drink, is if in vessels it is invalid, but if it is in the ground, it is valid. If ink, gum, or copperas fell into the vessel and the color changed, it's invalid. If one used the water on any matter of work or he soaked it in his bread, it is invalid. Shimon the Timnite says if it is intended to soak it in his water and it fell into a different water, it's valid. If one rinsed utensils in the water, or if he scrubbed measures with the water, it is invalid. However, if he rinsed it in the water utensils that were already rinsed or were new, the water is valid. Rabbi Yossi invalidates the water in the case of new utensils.
Even in the case of new utensils, he says it's adding something, but the halacha doesn't follow Rabbi Yossi. So if nothing was actually achieved by rinsing the vessel in the water, then it's not considered that malach has been done with it and can still be used for netzilas yadayim. All right, Krisos Daled Aleph.
If there is a doubt whether one ate Kale's fat or did not eat it, or even if he ate it, and if there is still a doubt whether it contained the amount required for a katos or whether it did not, if Kale's fat and permissible fat were before him and he ate one of them, but is not known which of them he ate, or if his wife and sister both were with him with him in the house, and he inadvertently cohabitated with one of them, but it was not known which one he had in which one of them he inadvertently had cohabitated, or if he was either the Sabbath or a weekday and performed labor on one of them, or if it is not known on which day he did it, the man must bring an Ashim Talmud.
That's the Hashem Taloi, yeah.
I don't understand what they mean that inadvertently cohabitated.
Inadvertently. Well, if it was, for example, if it was he had relations with somebody, but he doesn't know who it was.
It's really kind of hard.
In other words, it's a shogeg. It's a shogeg. Like if he had deliberately had relations with an erva, then he wouldn't bring a chatas. He'd just be chayav kares.
Right.
So the fact is that the korban chatas means that you have to be in a situation of shogeg in order to be in the parasha.
Right.
The shogeg means, well, I mean, okay, the lights were out and he doesn't know who it was, and nobody's answering as to who it was. I don't know. It is kind of far-fetched.
Yeah.
But you could pull together some sort of scenario where both of them are refusing to say who it was.
Right. It's strange. All right. Just as he ate 2 portions of Caleb fat in one lapse of awareness, he is liable to only 1 katos. So when the transgression is not known, he only brings 1 asham tulai. If there was an awareness in the interim, just as he brings a katos for each one, does he bring an asham tulai for each one. It's just as if he ate Caleb bread, nosor, or pickle in one period of forgetfulness, he is liable for each one. So when the transgression is not known, he must bring an asham tulai for each one. If Caleb and Nosor were before him and he ate one of them, but it's not known which one he ate, for his menstruate wife or his sister were with him in the house and he inadvertently cohabitated with one of them, but it's not known which one of them he inadvertently cohabitated with.
Both of them are chayav chatas. He just doesn't know which one.
Or if the Sabbath and Yom Tov followed one another.
Shabbos and Yom Kippur, not Yom Tov.
That's what I say. And Sabbath and Yom Kippur followed one another and they performed labor at twilight, but it is not known on which of them he performed labor. Reb Eliezer holds him liable to a katos, but Reb Shua exempts him. Said Reb Yossi, they did not disagree with that one who performed labor at twilight is exempt, where I must say that he did part of the labor today and part of it tomorrow. Concerning what they did differ, they're concerning the one who performed labor in the middle of the day, and but it is not known whether he did it on the Sabbath or on Labor Day, on Yom Kippur, or concerning one who performed labor, that is not known what type of labor he did. Reb Eliezer holds them liable to katos, but Reb Yeshua exempts them. Said Reb Yehuda, Reb Yeshua encompasses this even from an asham talei.
Right, so that's an interesting thing, is that you've got a suffix, but the suffix is between 2 things that whichever one he did, he's chayav chatas, and therefore Rabbi Eliezer is saying it doesn't matter what he did because he has to bring a chatas. There's no suffix over here. He did something that's chayav chatas.
Right.
And Rabbi Yeshua is saying no, it's still a suffix between 2 different things, and he would have to bring an asham taloi. But Rabbi Yehuda says no, actually he's pater altogether, right? Because and he says it's a diok on the fact that he has in order to bring an asham taloi, you have to have a suffix whether you did something chayav chatas or you did nothing wrong at all. That's when you bring the asham taloi. But if you're chayav, if you know you're chayav chatas but you're just not sure for which avera, then he's kind of fallen. He's gotten through a loophole in which he doesn't get to bring a chatas at all, or even an asham taloi. Who is the halacha like in this? Doesn't actually paskin. He doesn't paskin between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer in this case. Okay.
All right. Okay. Gimel. Reb Shimon Tzotzori and Reb Shimon say they did not disagree that concerning anything of one category he is liable. Concerning what do they differ? Concerning something of two categories that Reb Eliezer holds him liable to a katos, and Reb Yeshua exempts him. Said Reb Yehuda, even if he intended to pick up figs and he picked up grapes, to pick grapes and he picked up figs, to pick black ones and he picked up white ones, for to pick white ones and he picked up black ones. Reb Eliezer holds him liable to a katos, and to a katos that Reb Yeshua exempts him. But when Reb Yehuda is amazed that the Yossi emerges, Reb Yossi exempts him in the case. If so, why is it stated in which he sinned? This is to exclude an unwitting act.
So, and in here, it's paskened according to Rabbi Yeshua, as Rabbi Yehuda explains his words, that he's patur legamre.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Okay,
we have one more.
Bava Kama, Bav Gimel.
If one makes the sacks of grain in another's field without permission, and the animal belongs to the owner of the field, eats them, he is exempt. But if he is injured by them, the owner of the stack is liable. Should he make the stacks with permission, the owner of the field is liable. If one can cause a fire through a deaf mute, a mentally deranged person, or a minor, he is exempt from the law of Moses, of man, laws of man, but liable by the laws of heaven. If he causes it through one of sound mind, the one of sound mind is liable. If one brings the fire and one brings the wood, and the one brings the wood is liable, then the wood and the one who brings the fire is liable. If another one comes along and fans of it, the one who fans it is liable. To the fire spread the wind, to the wind fan, all are exempt. Okay, I'm really tripping up by reading here. If one ignites a fire with his own property, how far can the fire cross? If Elazar ben Azariah says, we view it as though it were in the middle of the core space of land.
Hold on, I think you skipped.
Wait, I did. If one set a fire and it consumes wood, stones, or earth, he is liable. As it is said, if a fire goes forth and comes across thorns, and a stack of grain or standing grain, or a field is consumed by the one who ignited the fire, shall purely pay. If he crosses a fence on its high, or a public road, or a river, he's exempt. If one ignites a fire within his own property, how far can the fire cross? Reb Eliezer says, if you view it as if it was in the middle of a core space of land, and Reb Eliezer's son 16 cubits. It's like a public offering.
A public domain.
I don't know where these words are coming from. Reb Eliezer says 16 cubits, like a public highway. Reb Akiva says 50 cubits. Reb Simon says the one who ignited the fire shall pay. All is according to the fire. A slave bound to it and a kid near it, and it was burned with it, is exempt. The sages occur with Rabbi Yehuda in the case of one igniting a large tower that he pays for. I skipped again. I'm sorry. Didn't I? Yeah, I skipped. If one ignites a stack of grain and utensils were in it and they burned, Rabbi Yehuda says he must pay for what was inside it. The sages, however, say he pays only for a stack of wheat or barley. If there was a kid bound to it and a slave near it, and it was burned, it was burned with it, he is liable. A slave bound to it and a kid near it, and it was burned with it, is exempt.
Why is that? Because if the slave is bound to it, then he's committed murder. So therefore, because he's chayv b'nafsho, he's patur from the zikin. And if there's an animal near it, then the animal should have gotten away, in which case he's patur.
Mm-hmm. The sages concur with Rabbi Yehuda in the case of one igniting a large tower, that he pays for all that was inside it, for it is customary for people to place things in homes.
Okay, that's done. All right. So get in touch with me later about getting those.
All right, maybe the next day or two, I'll figure out what I need and see what's